Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Mastering Dungeons, a D&D podcast that talks about D&D stuff. Who would have thought? Here with me, as always, is my beloved co-host Teos Abadia. Hey Teos, what's
Hey,
going on,
Shawn.
my friend?
I am in a very positive mood. I just got back from my reunion weekend. It was my 30th reunion and for college. And
Mm.
it was great. I saw my daughter who also attends. And yeah, like my heart is full. Like seeing good people, feeling good about my memories of campus, despite all the things I went through. Like it really felt good looking back on it. Feel good about the kids I met that are young students there, friends of my daughters. And then I was super excited to see my son and come home. So yeah, overall
Nice.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like things are all right in the world momentarily. Don't jinx
Cool.
it.
How is everything at North Carolina Tech and Bar and Grill?
It's wonderful. Swimmingly, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. The fries are still crisp.
Yeah, actually, I had to go to NC State because they beat us in basketball, so all the
Uh,
celebrations took place there. It was very sad,
So
but
that is sad, but hey, it's
what are you
all
gonna
in
do?
the academic triangle there, right? So we're all
Research Triangle
happy.
Park forever.
Yep, yep. So I wanted to say thank you to the mighty Jared, who sent me a copy of the Black Ballad, yes, from Storyteller's Forge and Four Horse Publishing. I did not get a chance to sit down and read it yet. It's been quite a busy time, and it just came, but the book is beautiful.
Incredible.
Just looking through it makes me want to read it, and I'm not a visually oriented person, so that is quite an accomplishment. So yeah, I mean it is about death and exploring that, I believe, from what I've read of the back and the intros, and it's that evocative pull from the layout and the art
It
just
yeah.
captures the imagination.
Yeah, really beautiful. I love it. Like that has like like silver on the side, and I too, because I was away at this reunion, I got it right before I went off, and so I have not been able to look at it. But it really looks amazing. I mean, God, the cover and just it's incredible to me. You know, how fortunate are we in our hobby that we now, that someone can create this and they aren't, Wizards of the Coast or even Kobold Press. They can be a far smaller entity and have an incredible product like this. That's just unbelievable. And hats off to the creators, to the team. But also I celebrate the industry just being at that point where a book this beautiful can arrive. And so I'm excited to look at the Black Ballad and read through it because it looks really incredible.
Mhm. For sure. And the Mighty Jerd is one of our sponsors, and
Thank
we
you.
also get emails from our patrons, or emails, tweets, Discord messages, YouTube comments. So we are going to answer one today. This one comes to us via YouTube from Michael J. Pastor, who was commenting on something that we talked about before about the potential modular nature of fifth edition when it was being designed. And Michael says, is it possible that they, being Wizards of the Coast making fifth edition, actually succeeded in their goal of modularity, not directly, but indirectly? There are so many, quote, plug and play systems or subsystems that have been created by third party publishers that one can bolt on, replace, or refine with the original infrastructure. What wasn't made originally has been made subsequently, and therefore has created a positive feedback loop, keeping it around for 10, now 10 plus years. And I think that is definitely a good way to look at it. I think that's a generous way to look at it in terms of giving Wizards of the Coast the credit that they did this purposefully, because I don't think that they did this purposefully. I think it's definitely true that what came out was a system that can be added to, can be replaced, but that's more the nature of role-playing games and role-playing game systems than it is of any intentionality of design.
Mm.
In order to design that intentionally, I think Wizards, the D&D team there that made 5th edition would have had to have been much larger, had much better funding, and had a lot more time. Then you could have potentially gotten a system where it was intentionally made to be used in different ways by different people. Any role-playing game can be used in different ways by different people, but for that design to be intentional, there needs to be great care.
Yeah.
And so the way that it was talked about potentially to be designed was, you want to make it feel like OD&D, we can do that. You want to make it feel like 4th edition with at will encounter daily powers. We can, you can play
Tactical
it that way.
miniatures, right? Yeah.
Right, right. And that's not what this is.
No.
But it is a well-designed game, which does then lend itself to have people understand that design and plug in their own additions to that system.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that so there are a couple of things that are in this question that I both agree with, but don't sort of see eye to eye.
Mhm.
Modularity was really the idea, as you kind of said, Shawn. It was really that idea that you could, in reading the book, say, I'm going to turn this on, or I'm going to turn that on, or I'm going to turn these 2 things on, but not these 4. And that's not at all present in the book. And so that was sort of, if you will, a design failure, though that's a hard word to use. I wouldn't really use that word, but that design didn't come through. As they worked on it, it was too hard, and they couldn't really put it together. And I agree with you that it would have taken more time and more people to try to get that to be there. And I think the great question is, do you even want that, right? I think you've asked this in the show notes, Shawn, so it's not an original thought on my end, but I recall, and I wish I could access the forums, which no longer exist, from back in the days, to look up the many times that I said, I don't know that this modularity is a good idea. Because you end up with a lot of people playing a game differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that destroys the cohesive nature, right? And if you imagine a group of people getting together to play Storm King's Thunder, but one person wants these, domain creation rules, and the other person wants this OD&D streamlined experience, and the other person expects a 4th edition tactical miniatures game, because that's how they've all been separately playing D&D. That's not necessarily a great thing. We have old editions that you can turn to if you really feel that strongly. But where I think this really was an enormous, fantastic success was that there was a clarity of vision from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, which was about speaking to all of the editions of D&D. And this was, for many of the leaders of this effort and team members, was something that they seemed to really feel evocatively. And modularity was one of the things that came off of that, was this desire to be able to turn things on and off. That didn't happen. But what did was this through line of saying, hey, we're appealing not just to our current players, but our old players, including players we've lost, and people who like those kinds of play. And it started with, running through all of these different editions of D&D and seeing what is it in these editions that appealed, right? Why was this so fun at the time and now? And so what you ended up with is not modularity, but speaking to those different editions, right? A 1st level character has many things that speak to 2nd edition or even earlier, as Rob talked about in the video that we linked last week. That was the huge success, right? And I think that has been one of the keys to the enduring appeal of 5th edition for 10 plus years, is that clarity of vision around the design, which is very interesting to note, because we are stepping away from some of those aspects now. And that may be genius, because maybe it's time for the design to shift and appeal differently and provide different experience, or maybe it's folly and we won't know for some time.
Right. The one way in my mind that you could get modularity in the same game, if you want to, and it's, again, maybe we don't want to, is to have a design where each tier of play is a slightly different game.
Yeah.
So you could levels 1 to 5, 1 to 4, whatever. That's your basic D&D game. That is you have 2 things that your character can do. when you start and you only make one choice during character creation. Then when you hit 5th level or random level, then this part comes into play. Now you
Yeah.
start playing a slightly different game. And when you hit 10th or 20th or however many levels you want, that way everyone can still be playing the same game. They're just playing it at different tiers of play, which uh,
Hmm.
brings out different kinds of play elements. Even then, you're talking about an effort to link all of those things and make one
Yeah.
build up on another, which is a huge design task.
It's a huge design task, and it's a questionable one. And that, like when we saw with the D&D bastions being something that started at, I forget, 5th level, 7th level, whatever it was. you know why are you telling me that nobody wants to run a tavern at level 1?
Mhm.
Right? And in fact, why are you supposing that the goal of it is that I get magic items and power and gold and things like that, rather than the actual story and play of it? Right? You're making these in this modular, I can choose to turn on or off bastion play. You're making these big guesses as what players want that I don't think are backed by, at least for what I see, but that could be my own bias too, right? It's never easy to be on the design teams. I'm not trying to be critical of the individuals, but
Right.
all of these things are questionable, right? And so it's very hard when you come into modularity. It becomes really hard to think about what it does. The subsystems that we see from third-party publishers are often a lot of fun. They're often imperfect. No shocker there.
Right.
But there's a reason why they're sort of being provided by a third party, because they're not the critical part of play, which is different than I think what the goal of modularity was. The goal of modularity was critical play elements can vary.
Right.
Some of them were not, like things like, I think Mike Merle's long talked about, often blogged about wanting to support mass combat, right? To really go back to even the wargaming roots of things. That clearly never made it in. It's never succeeded in any edition, so that's no personal failure. It's just something that didn't work out. But there were things that, the idea of feats being able to be optional, right, is something that even the team now is stepping away further. So it's fascinating. I love this topic.
Yep. So thank you, Michael, for that question. And now let's get into our news and commentary section, starting with the Fallout TV series. It has dropped. It is on Amazon Prime. And as that TV show becomes public, Modifius has sold out of their books.
Huh.
According to an article from the Bill of Lost Souls, Modifius has sold out of the print publications of their Fallout product. Physical versions of the core rulebook, the GM's toolkit, and the player bundle are all sold out. You can still get them on digital digital sites such as tabletops or Drive Through RPG, but they're going to have to do some more printing if they want to keep up with the demand from these books, which I thought was interesting, timely, and it's not often that we see this connection between a
Yeah.
non-RPG medium actually affect RPG sales. Now, maybe there's no correlation. Maybe this is just it just so happens that they ran out when the show dropped, but correlation may sometimes mean causation.
Well,
You don't know.
and I think, yeah, I mean, hopefully this is correlated, right? I'm looking at the Modifius website right now. They have, a lot of minis and dice and things like that that are available. There is one copy left of the Fallout role-playing game starter set. So clearly there are a number of things that are sold out. That, RPG plus GM screen is sold out and so on. So, this seems to be all quite factual. Yeah, is it linked is fantastic. And what I'd want to know is, how did they link it, right? Because one thing that was surprising to me, well, I think everybody's always been surprised by Star Wars, right? Like any number of Star Wars things come out on the media side. This does not correspond to the matching role-playing game book selling out, no matter whether it's 4th edition, D&D during the 4th edition era that controlled Star Wars Saga, or with FFG creating products or any of that. It's never seemed to really correlate. Whether Star Wars is hot or cold doesn't matter for the RPG. Song of Ice and Fire, right? Game of Thrones comes out. Are the Green Running books falling off the, coming off the shelves, and everybody buying them up? No, not at all. In fact, it was really hard to have people even remember that RPG existed. So I don't, yeah, it's amazing. I'd be really curious to learn what's behind it if it is indeed linked. Hopefully the answer is this is a new era of interconnectedness and people will actually seek out experiences related to some change like this. It would be great.
So speaking of crossover IPs, WBUR-FM published an interview with Hasbro CEO Chris Cox. And it was interesting to me because there were 5 questions that they asked Chris. And then the preview of the story had a little lead in talking about some general topics. And as it is with stuff that tries to boil everything down into one sentence, some of the information was true-ish, but not necessarily spot on. And then we get to the 5 questions, and I just laughed because it was the typical CEO speak of trying to say nothing while trying to say something and wanting to get a point across, but not being able to actually say the point you want because it might not sound exactly promising or humble or, what have you. And so I wanted to play a little game. I wanted to read you, Teos, the question and have you answer it truthfully as, as not the CEO of Hasbro, but just as somebody who is in touch with the industry and knows sort of what's going on.
Okay. So I'm going to do my best to say, here's what the answer kind of is if you didn't have to cover your butt.
Here's the answer, right? Okay.
Let's go.
All right.
I'm ready.
Teos, can you explain the mass layoffs of last year and why certain jobs were affected?
It's super hot right now for companies to lay people off. It results in a giant jump in stocks, which recovers a lot of your valuation, enables you to do all kinds of business things. And if I want to try to put a little bit of a spin on it, but this is not entirely non-factual. So first reason is other companies do it. They rewarded hugely financially for it. So we should do it too. There is no evidence, if we go to the university level, there's no great evidence that firing people results in a leaner organization, a better organization. So that's not at all the reason. But getting those rewards from the financial system for doing these things does in fact prevent us from having to lay off more people when we don't know the answer to how to make the company better. And so many things are out of control. And so we may just be heading to worse years. And since we know how to do anything, this actually rescues us and prevents us from firing more people.
Awesome. In his answer, Chris Cox had mentioned something about the toy side versus the digital and game side. Yeah. So the follow-up question was, what is it that's more challenging about the toy side that has you pivoting more to the game and digital sides?
Toys aren't selling. You parents are terrible and allowing your kids to rot their brains out in front of screens. This means that they're not playing with action figures and dolls to dress up and things like that. And even when we try to add mild digital stuff, that's not good enough. So we're going to make more Monopoly Go type things for older people. And we're going to lay people off and try to do more digital stuff and slowly pivot, but we can't figure this out. There's no answer. Nobody knows whether somehow toys will make a giant comeback the way board games did. So who knows?
Great answer.
But digital stuff selling, there we go.
Okay. A number of fans said they were outraged when a leaked corporate document came out that would have taken some royalty money from individual creators who make content of their own for the game, say a new monster or a new world. Hasbro walked back the plan, but some fans are still unhappy with the direction the game is going. How do you make sure to win them back?
This is sort of a two-part question. If I really get back to your actual question, how do we win them back? We don't need to. We can just replace them with new people, if I'm being totally frank. So we can just appeal to people. Plus, most people don't care. I mean, most people still gas up with Exxon gas, and that place like literally destroyed people's livelihoods, coastlines, the ocean, ecosystems, and they're forgiven, and people still gas up for Exxon. So that's not really the problem. We can handle that. We have PR departments, we have marketing, we have new products, and we have fans who frankly just don't care. So that's not the problem. As to kind of the earlier part of it, the setup of it, look, we have so many departments and so many people, we never know what one or the other is doing. And so, one group's working on one project around an OGL revision, another one's worried about this aspect, which is a legitimate worry of whether our IP is threatened by the OGL and how to handle it. And then deadlines crash together and we show someone a version that we don't really totally think through and approve. People get outraged and then we have to react to it. But I think we fixed that. We put everything in the Creative Commons because that kind of solves the problem. And this wasn't that big a deal. We're just a scrambled organization like all other corporations out there. Our bad.
Excellent answer. Magic the Gathering was Hasbro's first billion-dollar brand, and the company is seeking to steer it toward more casual players by printing and putting out more cards for people to play. But Bank of America briefly downgraded the company's stock in response, saying that Hasbro was, quote, killing the golden goose by flooding the market. Is that a potential trade-off here?
Yeah, it's totally a potential trade-off. You have to look at how you're making the money, right? And as people steer towards digital, then we want to steer people towards Arena and the number of digital customers we have and how they respond to digital releases. Frankly, we can't believe that these cards are still selling the way they are. So we just keep pinching ourselves and keep making it and trying to make as many as we can to get as much money of it as possible, because this playing card thing keeps playing out. And so, every now and then we're going to kind of screw up and do too many, but that's okay. The collector market doesn't make us a lot of money. It makes other people money. And we like that because it's an ecosystem, but it's not our top priority. We'll never say that publicly, but that's the reality. So flooding the market's okay if it works for us and doesn't destroy it long term. We never know if it is or isn't. So we just play and it ebbs back and forth. And every now and then, we won't have wine and dine Bank of America people sufficiently to prevent them from saying things.
Good answer there. Finally, Hasbro has a video game coming out starring Matthew McConaughey after the Dungeons and Dragons movie did only okay. But is this where you're headed? Not so much Hollywood movies, but blockbuster games.
Yeah, of course, except when we aren't. So we will do a lot of different types of video game type things. Whenever one of them works, we'll tell all investors that this is our strategy. Whenever that doesn't work, we will pivot to one of the other things and say that that's the strategy and try to look as smart as we can as possible. Because, we just finished telling you that we were shuttering a whole bunch of studios. And then Baldur's Gate 3 was surprisingly, amazingly good. Good on us. We hope for more of that.
Mm-hmm. That is the interview that I wanted to read. That is the interview that we deserve. That is the interview that we're never going to have.
I'm going to go bathe. It still feels horrible to say things like that. It's just,
it's
but
this is right.
We are all culprits in this, right? Like we are part of the fabric of this society that does this. So all I can say is support public education, get money to teachers, try to slowly change the world, because this is a horrible setup and you've just stripped me of all the positivity from reunion weekend. But challenge. Just this is the world we live in, where Monopoly Go, that isn't even really like a Monopoly game, is billions of dollars based on millions of billions in marketing. I don't even track the numbers. It's all bizarre, right? And the movie increasingly looks like it probably was a success that became a tax write-off, right? And so nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing is truly real. And at the end of it are the things that we as individuals are all doing, but also the regulations that we use to
Mhm.
for companies. And so support regulations. I guess that's that. Raise your kids right, support regulations. There we go.
There you go. But we have better news that D&D Beyond is preparing for Vecna. The adventure Vecna Eve of Ruin will release on May 21st or earlier, I believe, if you have ordered it online in the digital bundle. D&D Beyond is now providing insights into the product. An article called Who is Vecna and Why Must He Die provides the villain's history from the OD&D scant words that it brought from the Greyhawk setting to his links to other lore, such as the Book of Vile Darkness, the artifact he creates, his becoming a lich, betrayal by Kaz, links to Ravenloft, and so much more. For those of you who don't know, Vecna is an anagram of Vance, of which the author, J.D. Vance, his magic system was imported into D&D, so it's a Vancian magic system.
And the novels were fundamental to sort of things that
Yeah.
Greyhawk or that Gary Gygax liked, and so yeah, made a lot of sense.
So what else was in this article?
So I think that I don't know if I missed this somewhere, but they kind of just talk about how Vecna was trying to become a god and he failed, and because Cass stabbed him, and then he failed again, and now Vecna is a greater deity. And while I did see that in the DMG he's listed in the deity thing, I just assumed that was a lack of like demigod versus god type filtering. But I guess he's just a greater deity now. And I don't recall that happening in an adventure, but maybe I'm failing my lore. I'm going to have to go to the FR wiki and look up his whole history. But so he is now a god, which makes it always strange if this is now a campaign against a god somehow. Will we be allowed to defeat Vecna and fight him? Like, how do level 20 PCs in this edition of the game don't really fight gods versus, the top tier 4E could. So it'll be interesting to see, and same of 2E and things like that. So we'll see. There's also a second article, Shawn playing a lich in D&D. I thought that was kind of cool. It reminded me of there's a really neat old classic Dragon magazine article on becoming a lich. And this is kind of like that. It's pretty nicely written. And it talks through, if your DM approved it, how could a high level PC, right, a PC that has 9th level spells, become a lich as part of play? And so we're given, and it tries to do that in really few words, which is not easy. So it talks about how you could do this by maybe appealing to somebody like Orcus or Tenebris. You could gain the Book of Vile Darkness and unlock a secret there. You could seek out a patron or use the wish spell. And then we get information on the ritual to become a lich, which is 13 days to construct what is now called a spirit jar and brew a potion of transformation. So that seems to be a 2024 change on removing phylactery, which is fine. If you fail at this ritual, you become a bone claw. And then kind of some thought process around your capabilities, what it means to be undead, how to draw inspiration from the lich stat block. There's a section on can you play as a good lich that provides things for the DM to mull over, and I guess the player as well. And there are also questions on how to protect your spirit jar. You have to kind of feed souls in it to maintain it, which seems to be sort of taking that Tomb of Annihilation concept and leaning into that. Yeah, kind of cool. I overall enjoy this as a read, and it tickles my brain memories around the similar concepts that have been out there in the past where people have wrestled with whether a player should become a lich.
For those of you who play in Grim Hollow in Ghostfire Gaming's world, you will recognize that there is a lich transformation and that a lot of this is similar to that. But that's okay. It's a trope that is fairly well used, fairly well known, and so you're going to get some parallel construction with those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And there was one other thing, a prequel adventure. Is that true?
Indeed.
Vecna Nest of the Eldritch Eye. I have not looked at this, but I am hearing it's out there.
I took a look today. It just came out, right around the time of us recording. So I went through it, raced through it, which was not hard because it is not long. So, if you think of things like when Ravenloft came out, right? We had the what's it called, Death House.
Hmm.
Is that the name?
Yeah.
Given out that was like a sample that you could be like, cool, play through this, and you're going to want to now be in Ravenloft. And think about all that energy it created to have that, right? And this was available for store play. Stores were running it. They received a copy through the WPN program and all this. Well, here this is a adventure that is only given out on D&D Beyond to those pre-ordering the adventure through D&D Beyond only. So go to your local gaming store. You can't get this. There isn't a writer listed. Lead designer is Chris Perkins, designer Mackenzie Darmus. So maybe Mackenzie wrote this based on Chris notes or something. Hard to read the tea leaves exactly. It is for level 3, 4 to 6 PCs. And the level 3 is interesting because the adventure begins at level 10. So this isn't a setup. And so often the D&D previews or prequels don't actually lead into the larger thing, right? It doesn't match up. And I'm always shocked by that. But this is 2 to 3 hours playtime. And I guess what it does is prepare your players more than your characters, unless you're going to run a larger campaign in between the two. And we're taken to Neverwinter. And Lord Dagalt Neverember, who was apparently recovered from the events of the D&D movie, hires the PCs to patrol the city. And they find a guy, holding an eye, and a chain of events related to Vecna leads you into the catacombs below the city's famed graveyard, which is called Neverdeath. And there you find cultists of Vecna. It's short, it's linear. The adventure suitably establishes concepts of Cult of Vecna. If you've played things like Age of Worms and dealt with the Vecna cultists there, this feels a lot like that kind of experience. And I think, somebody who'd looked at it this morning on our Discord channel said, should this really have been, is this best? Is this serving D&D best as being a pre-order benefit? And I agree with them that it's not. It's fine, but if you're going to run the adventure, this isn't a great lead into that. This doesn't make your run of the adventure better, as far as I can tell. And this could have been energy and excitement for all of the hobby to be playing off of this, especially if it was in PDF format, so that people could run it in stores. You could have game days around this. That to me is great marketing that leads to sales and community and excitement, and the idea of an adventure feeling like a big major thing, right? This is the time of Vecna 2024, right? Like, let's go. It doesn't feel like that, right? It feels like just a weak marketing attempt to shift you to buy things on their digital platform, and I don't love it.
Thank you for that. We also get news that a new OP program is coming from Gamehole Publishing. So according to a post in their Facebook group, Alex Kammer has said that Wardens of the Eastern Marches will premiere in 2025. We didn't get any strong details on specifics, but Alex did say that player characters must be members of one of 6 possible alliances, and alliances in this campaign will play a central role not just in the adventures, but in the actual play experience of the campaign. Those 6 groups are the Order of the Intrepid, an organized crime outfit, the Enterprise Guild, a commerce and trade group, the Quill Society, a knowledge and academic arcane group, Order of the Pontificate, a philosophical spiritual divine group, the Golden Conservancy, a nature-focused group, and the Sovereign Military Order of Asura, which is made up of active and retired soldiers. Alex said there will be much, much, much more to come on these alliances, the program itself, and their ongoing further publishing efforts. But this only came out less than a week ago, so we haven't heard anything since then. But as organized play veterans and people who are definitely organized play, knowledgeable and curious, I wanted to throw that out there to our audience and see if you had any comments on that.
Oh gosh, so many thoughts. I mean, so one is, Alex has I'm sure, a great vision around this because he has so much
Mhm.
experience in it. Um, it's a very interesting event for our industry, for our D&D area of the industry, that somebody who's been an official partner for Wizards would want to launch their own program like this that is not tied to the auspices of Wizards.
Mhm.
That is telling, a little frightening, that Adventures League has reached some point to where, I think Baldwin Games, I wouldn't be shocked if Baldwin Games would do the same thing if they weren't so close to Wizards as they are and weren't being allowed to create sort of alternative adventures to keep convention play interesting and so on. They can create their own little campaigns, and so it's easier for them, whereas I think it's harder for Alex's group in Gamehole. And that's a shame because yes, you do want alternate experiences, like we've had the Ebron campaign, we've had, Ravenloft campaign, things like that. But you also want the general campaign to continue to have real strong energy and to reach out in various ways to the community. If it's not working except in very narrow ways, it's not working. So I don't know. This does it causes me to ponder and reflect,
Mhm.
which I'm doing a lot of. I don't have any answers here. I really just have questions and
Yeah.
pondering.
Yeah.
Um, because this campaign, at least the description of it, sounds really interesting, really cool, but it sounds big and engrossing. It sounds
Mhm.
like a main campaign rather than an offshoot campaign to me when it has factions like this. But it'd be interesting to see. It's too early to tell, but if it's really meant to be a big sort of major thing, then that is harder for the community to kind of walk, have a foot in both and all of that, and yeah, a lot to
Mhm.
think through.
Yeah. Well, we've seen D&D Converse in the wild, but now we are also seeing D&D clothing from Blackmilk Clothiers. They are partnering with Wizards of the Coast for D&D themed a clothing line, from a red dragon knit sweater to a Strahd robe to the D&D graffiti biker shorts. There is so much in this line that might catch your eye and catch your fancy. Blackmilk is an Australian urban clothing designer and manufacturer, and we have a link in the show notes to all of the different outfits and accessories that you can get. Some of them are obviously very D&D focused in terms of the big logos or iconic monsters like the mimic, and some of it is the print is so fine, or the patterns, unless you look very closely you don't even notice that it is like a die
Yeah.
or some sort of D&D logo within the pattern.
Yeah, I had not looked at this until I saw it in the show notes, and I'm looking at it again now, and it's really amazing. Like there's a beholder dress, or sorry, a
Mhm.
displacer beast dress that like it just looks like a really neat pattern until you notice
Yeah,
that the swirls are the its tentacles, and then
right.
the body of the creatures at the very bottom.
Yeah,
I mean, my daughter would wear a lot of these clothes. It's actually the
right.
first time I've seen like everything is really super cool for women. It's hard to find that. There have been a couple of examples over the years, I guess, but
Yeah,
there are some really neat outfits for women that, yeah, it does not look. It can look super geeky or not, depending on the choices you make. It's really
yeah.
cool. I invite everybody to take a look at this. That's neat.
Yeah, I noticed that there was some subtlety to some of the pieces, and so it was just it caught my eye. I thought it would be of interest to folks out there who
Yeah,
may want to buy something and show their geekery without it being so out and in front of them with their clothing. So
great stuff.
check
It's
that out.
speaking of clothing, I did go for the Converse shoes, which were not as expensive as I feared they would be. And you can customize them, which is
Mm.
really cool. And while there is sadly no flump, you can choose like what
Mm.
goes on the back, on the front, what the tongue is, the color, the design. There are a lot of really neat things. So if you saw the Converse shoes and just saw them as sort of like one of the couple of stock pictures, you may want to take a closer look at that as well, because it really is not a terrible price for shoes these days that can be 100 or more. These are fairly affordable as shoes go, and you can highly customize it to look like what you want. So I ordered a
Great.
pair.
Nice. Last but not least, our creator corner. I wanted to highlight Monsters of Drakkenheim, that Kickstarter that we mentioned, where support for D&D Beyond is right there in the Kickstarter. So you can choose D&D Beyond as your virtual tabletop and have access to the Monsters of Drakkenheim, all its content, right in D&D Beyond from the start. It will include over 150 new monsters, and I know they've already shattered that with their stretch goals. Uh, you can harvest felled foes to craft loot, engage in epic boss fights, explore forbidden layers. All of that is supported by the Kickstarter. This is from Ghostfire Gaming, partnering with the Dungeon Dudes. I a few months ago went up and play tested some of the monsters with Monty and Kelly up at their offices in Toronto, and it was a lot of fun. There is new things that monsters can do with them, new conditions monsters might put on your character. So if you're looking for something, you can play it straight or you can play with these additional rules. It's good stuff. The Kickstarter is got a week left as of when this show drops, and it's almost at 1 million. It's a
Wow.
820,000 right now, so it's there's a good chance that it might reach $1 million. So congratulations to Ghostfire and the Dungeon Dudes for that.
Yeah, Dungeon Dudes, fantastic people. Really enjoyed meeting them at Gamehole, and I'm glad for them to have that success.
Mhm.